Edgar, tell me what you were in the Marines and how did you end up on the USS Indianapolis and what was your task on board?
Okay, after boot camp, they said, Marine, you're going to sea school, which meant that I would be seagoing. And then later, after sea school, they sent me up to San Francisco. There was the big USS Indianapolis, and that was to be my home for the duration of the war. And we had charge of all guard duty aboard. There were 39 of we Marines aboard. And then we manned anti-aircraft guns, 5-inch and 40 millimeter, yes.
And tell me about one day you're in San Francisco and there's this very large crate that is brought aboard the Indianapolis. Tell me about that.
Yeah, on July the 16th, 1945, at Hunters Point, San Francisco, we looked out on the dock and we saw all kinds of Navy Marine brass out there, and we knew something was up, and then we saw a little truck come up with a large crate on it, and our crane aboard ship reached over and picked that up and set it on the quarterdeck, and my Marine lieutenant said, Corporal Harrell, follow that into the port hangar deck. Well, Captain Parks, what is that? He said, we don't know, and we didn't know.
So that turned out to be Little Boy, one of the atomic bombs that was dropped in Japan. So did you guard it? Were you with the...
I stationed a guard and guarded it, and then momentarily there were two proposed to be Air Force officers that came aboard, and they had a little metal canister that they set on the quarterdeck, and a couple of sailors picked that up for them, and they took that up to a certain compartment and put that in there. Now, I might just get ahead of the story and say that was all the uranium that, half of all the uranium that America owned, and I stationed a guard and guarded that. And those Air Force officers were not Air Force officers, they were scientists from Los Alamos, New Mexico. Mm-hmm. So that tells you what they had.
Right.
And it took the two of that to form the atomic explosion that later was dropped at Hiroshima on August the 6th, I guess.
Yeah. So take me to the night of the sinking. Had you just gotten off duty, and what were you doing?
Okay, I had just gotten off a watch at 12 o'clock, went below deck, and got my blanket because a good captain said you can make a pallet out on the open deck. And I went all the way forward, not with my K-Pock life jacket, that's locked up in my locker, but I have my blanket, and I made me a pallet right down under the barrels of number 1 turret, the big 8-inch guns.
And were you awakened by the first torpedo, or were you still awake?
Well, yes. The first torpedo cut the bow of the ship off, which was within 30 or 40 feet of me, and I knew that the bow of the ship was cut off. The second one was back under number 2 turret, the big 8-inch gun, and a massive explosion. All that powder magazine went up. And so you knew the ship was doomed, and with that bow cut off and those screws pushing, all that water coming in, you could feel and hear the bulkheads down below breaking.
And so tell me, how did you get in the water, and what was the conditions like when you landed in the water?
Well, actually, I made my way to my emergency station back midship, and without a life jacket, my Marine lieutenant was there, and I said, Lieutenant Stauffer, permission to cut down those new supply of life jackets. He said, not until we get word to abandon ship. Well, the ship is sinking on the starboard side. Normally, the quarterdeck would be 8 feet above waterline, but there's water on the quarterdeck. The first 100 yards of the ship is already under, and so you're desperate, to get a life jacket, and then for word to come down to abandon ship.
So you finally got a K-Pock jacket. Tell me, how did you end up into the water?
Well, I ended up in the water and go to the port side and hold on to that rail, look out into the blackness of the night, and the ship is leaving you, and you're desperate to get off, and you look at that half-inch of black oil, but you're going to go into that, and you do, and you're going to wear it for 4.5 days, yes. We surmised that maybe 300 didn't even get off the ship, and there was 1197 aboard, so some 900 maybe got in the water, but most of them didn't make it to end of 4.5 days.
And were you just bobbing then with your life jacket in a group of people?
Yes, you got a cape-out jacket, and if in the daytime, you got swells of water, and you aren't just sitting back in the cape-out jacket, you're having to swim to protect yourself. Yes. Yeah. So you're working to stay alive, yes, the whole time.
And tell us about the sharks. When did you first see the sharks arrive?
Well, I have to say that daybreak the first day, we saw fins out at a distance swimming around. They weren't attacking the group, but it isn't long until a straggler would be out there, and you'd hear a blood-curdling scream, and you look, and you see that cape-out go under, and you dare not to go. You wait, but you'd like to know who your buddy might have been. But it's so happening so often that we're just losing boys every little bit. And when you do go and check, you find maybe that the bottom torso is gone or he's disemboweled.
Were you very afraid of the sharks? Were the sharks coming up to you?
Well, I'd say I had sharks within 6 or 8, 10 feet of me, but for some reason they didn't attack me.
Yeah. So day after day, you're losing more people then from your group?
Well, out of the group of 80, third day at noon, there's only 17.
Were you thinking I'm going to die at any moment, or what was kind of keeping you going?
Well, I have to say that, family back home, mom, dad, and brothers and sisters, and a certain brunette that was waiting for me, and she waited, and we were married in 47, and she was with me 71 years.
So were you also praying, or were
there's never a moment, hardly. You're desperate, and you see someone else that hasn't made it, or when there was only 3 of us, to see that one sailor that I don't know who he was, to see his head dropped in the water, and I shook him and said, "Hang in there, help will be here soon," and tried to encourage him. The second time I checked him, the same thing. The third time I checked him, it's too late, he's gone. So it's just Lieutenant Charles McKissick and myself. And we were there when this plane flying over looking for submarines spotted an oil slick in the water. That's along a miracle. But he came to check to see what that oil slick was. And in so doing, he sees boys scattered, he says, maybe 25-mile. Bodies, but he could not land those wheels, but he could radio back to Palau, and Adrian Marks and the PBY says, "That'll take me an hour and a half to get there," and he comes, and when he picked up the first survivor, USS Indianapolis.
Well, and Edgar, why do you think you were able to survive when so many of your fellow Marines and sailors did not?
Just like one sailor says to me many times over in North Carolina, and I've been over and spoken different times, and he says, they asked why he made it, and he said, never give up.